Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome to today's Mahabharata reading and Bhagavad Gita Shloka recitation. Let us begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्ता स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 1, text 1. We will be reciting chapters 1 to 3. 1. Madhava, you want to start? We still hear that static. Anyway, I'll do it. Did you change your earphones? It's still sounding. Okay, I'll just do it. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharmakshetre kurukshetre samavetaayuyutsavaha mamakah pandavaschaiva kimakurvata sanjaya. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? Let me also open the other verses. Bhagavad Gita 129. Vepatushcha sharire me romaharshascha jayate gandivam sramsate hastat tvakchaiva paridahyate. My whole body is trembling, my hair is standing on end, my bow Gandiva is slipping from my hand, and my skin is burning. 139. Kulakshaye pranashyanti kuladharma sanatana dharme nashte kulam kritsnam adharmo bhi bhavatyuta. With the destruction of the dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligion. 140. Adharmabhibhavat Krishna pradushyanti kulastriyah strishu dushtasu varshneya jayate varna sankaraha. When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become polluted, and from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. 141. Sankaro narakayaiva kulagnanam kulasya cha patanti pitaro hyesham lupta pindodakakriyaha. An increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life, both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down because the performances for offering them food and water are entirely stopped. Chapter 2, Text 1. Sanjaya Uvacha Tam Tatha Kripayavistam Ashrupurnakulekshanam Vishidantam Idam Vakyam Uvacha Madhusudanaha. Sanjaya said, seeing Arjun full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudan Krishna spoke the following words. 2:2 श्रीभगवानुवाच कुतस्त्वाकश्मलमिदं विषमे समुपस्थितम् अनार्यजुष्टम् अस्वर्ग्यम् अकीर्तिकरम् अर्जुन. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all befitting a man who knows the value of life. They do not lead to higher planets. They lead not to higher planets, but to infamy. 2:3 क्लैब्यमास्मगमः पार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्त्वोत्तिष्ठा परन्तप. O son of Pritha, do not yield to this degrading importance. It does not become you. Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of the enemy. 2:5 गुरून् हत्वा हि महानुभावान् श्रेयो भोक्तुं भैक्षमपीह लोके हत्वार्थकामांस्तु गुरूनिहैव भुञ्जीय भोगान् रुधिरप्रदिग्धान्. It would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with blood. Okay, Krishnashish, you can do 2:7. Unmute.
To seven. Karpan Nadosho Pahata Svabhava Yachan Vang Dharma Samudha Cheta Yachreyasya Nishritam Drohitam Me Shishyasteham Shadunam Kantapannam. Now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of my weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple, and the soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. 2:11. Sri Bhagavan Vacha Ashochanam Vashotrasvam Prajna Vadam Shabhashtase Gatasuna Gatasuncha Nanushochanti Panditaha. The Supreme Personality of Prophet says, while speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. Natvevaham jatunasam natvam me jana vipaya nachevana karyamaha sarve vayam param. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these things, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. Ehirosmin pradehe kamaram yovanam jara tatha dehantara praktir dhirastakranuryati. The embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age. The soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Matrasna Kaunteya Shitoshna Sukadukatva Abhanantayini Nityas Tanspitiksha Sabhavaga. Question of Kunti. The non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer season. They arise from sense perception, or sarana, marta, and one must learn following them without being disturbed. 2:15. Yam hina yatayanti purusham purushashavara samagata sukham somitratva. O best among them, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress, and is steady in both, is certainly eligible for liberation. 216. Nasaka vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sakaha, bhayo upi nishtontas, tattvadarshiji. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of God. 17. Avinashi tadvidhi yena sarvam idam tatam vinasham avyayasya nakashit kartumarvati. That which pervades the entire body, you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. 260 to 80. Ankavanta, Ankavanta, Imedeha, Nityasyoga, Sadirinaha, Anarshino, Brahmasya, Tasman, Vidyasya, Bharata. The material body, the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore, fight for descendant Bharata. 290. Ya elam vritti hantaram, ya shenam manyate hatam, bhavto na vijayanto, na yantanti na hamite. Neither he who thinks the living entity is slayer, nor he who thinks it slayer, is in null, for the self slays not, nor is slain. Najaya, Najayato, Niyate, Kadachi, Nayan, Tva, Havitam, Vanapiyam, Ajo, Nitya, Shashvato, Yam, Puran, Naham, Yate, Vanyan, for the soul, there is never birth, nor death, and unreturn. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. 222. Vasam, Sijiyam, Yatha Vihaya, Tavan, Vimati, Parani, Tatha Sharirani Vihaya Jinani, Hanyani Samyati Mavani Dehi. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. 223. Nailam chundam shasranam, Nailam dahati pavataha, Jailam kledayantyago, Nashurayati marutaha. The soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. 224. Achedyo yamadahyo akledyo shoshayocha nityasa vakatasthano achaloyam sanatanam. This individual soul is neither unbreakable and insoluble, and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. 227. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityor dhruvam brahmanyutasya cha tasmadapariharyate tattvam shochitinahasi. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death, one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament.
Neha Vikramana Sasti Pratyavayo Nuvite Masya Trayate Mahadopaya. In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution. The little advancement on the spot can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Sayapika Kunthar, Ekeha Kurunandana, Kahu Chaka, Asta, Mudhayo, Ravasai. Those who are on the spot are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of Prakurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many branched. 243. Yamimam Puspitam Vacham Pravadan Yapista Vetava Ratha Kartha Nadyada Stiti Vajam Kamatmanam Svargapara Priya Sitsa Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various spiritual activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant to good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sensitive gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. Yogeshwarya Prasakta in the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered with such things, a resolute determination for devotional with the Supreme Lord does not take place. Sraigunyo Visaya Veda, Nisraigunyo Bhavarta, Nirdundo Nityasa, Vasto, Niryogyo Sema. The Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of material nature, or origins. Become transcendental to these three modes. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Yavan Artha Udavan Sarvataha Sambuddho Tavan Sarvesu Brahmanasya Vitana. All purposes served by a small well since he served for a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phalesu karachana ma karma phalahetu for madhyasangasya karmani. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. Yogasta Guru Karmani Sankam Tyakta Dhananjaya Siddha Siddhya Samatvam Yoga. Perform your duty equipoised, or abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. Durena Yavaram Karma Buddhi Yoga Dhananjaya Buddho Saranam Vitsa Prapana Phalahezava. O Dhananjaya, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service, and in that consciousness surrender unto the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. 250. Buddhi Yokto Jaha Okay, Sakrata Skrita Tasmaya Devaya Yoga Karma Sukha. A man engaged in devotional service raises himself in both good and bad actions, even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga or arjuna, which is the art of all work. Karma Jambuddhi Yuktahi Phamam Chakra Madhyasa Janma Bandha Mukta Tadam Gatsadhyana. By thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries by going back to Godhead. यदा ते मोह कलिलं बुद्धिर्व्यतितरस्य Vedam Srodhavyasya Dhritasya. When your indulgence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that is to be heard and all that is to be heard.
Mahabharata Chitapragya Kavasa Samadhistasya Kesava Sitadhi Kim Pabhaseta Kim Asita Vadeta Kim. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? One sentence. How does he speak? And what is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk? Sri Bhagavan Prahadikam Saram Parthamanam Pradhanam Atmanivamanam the supreme personality of God itself. O Partha, when man gives up all varieties of desires for sense gratification, which arise from a quick concoction, and in his mind, satisfied, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. Dukkheso nirvana, sukheso vitasya, vitara parakrodha, tatadir munir. One who has not disturbed his mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, are elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a state of steady mind. Yasarvachana visnehas, tatprapya subhasubham, Navyanadvesti, tasya pragya pradisthita. In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. Sasyavani vartante niraharasya devina rasavartam rasopyasya param dristvani vartate. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, but the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. Yatoyapi kaunteya purusasyavyapasthitaha indriyani pramatini taranti prasabham manaha. The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind, even a man of discrimination, who is endeavoring to control them. Hence differences under full control and sense of economy with a steady intelligence. Saha Samhastesu Prajayate Samvat Sanjayate Kamans Kamam Krodho Vijayate. Rating the others of our senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. Bhagavati Sammoha, Sammoha Smriti Brahma, Smriti Brahmasat Buddhi Nasa, Buddhi Nasa Pranasati. From anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into material pool. Pradesakamuktestu Sayanindriyastaram Atmavasya Atma Prasadam Varikatsati. But a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. Sade sarva dukkhana anarkasyopadayate vasanyaseta sadhyasu buddhi paryavastate. For one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's inner kingdom is soon well established. Nasti buddhe ayuttasya, nasayuttasya bhavanaha, nasabhavadaya santir, asantasya kuta sukham. One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental endurance nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? Indriyanabhicaratam yanmanonvidhiyate tarasya harati pragyam vayurnavamivandasi. As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. Yanasa sarvabhutanam tasyam sagarti sayami yasyam sagarti bhutani sanasa pasyato muneh. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled, and the time of awakening for all beings is at night for the introspective states. Aparyamanam matalapatastam samudramapa yadvat tadvat kamavyam pravisanti sarve dasantamapnoti nakamakami. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that renders like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires.
3-4. Nakarmanam Naishkarmyam Purushoshmate Nacha Sanyasanadeva Siddham Samadhikachati. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. 3-5. Naikashtit saramapi jatu tishtatya karma krit karyate yavasha karma sarva prakriti jarvanai. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. 3-6. Karmendriyani sayamya yase manasatmanam indriyarthan murdhatma mithyachara sauchyate. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Yastvandriyani manasa niyamya rabhatarjana karmendriyaihi karma yogam asapta savishishyate. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga and Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. Niyatam kuru karma tvam, karma jyayo karmanam, sharira yatra pichate, na prasadhyada karmanah. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. 39. Yagyarthat karma nonyatra, lokoyam karma bandhanah, tadarsham karma kauteya, mukta sangha samachara. Sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage. Sayagya praja srishva, Purovacha prajapati, anena prasavishyadvam, esha voskashta karmadho. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, Be thou happy by this yajna, sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. Ishtam bhogan hivo deva, dasyate yajna bhavata, tardatan apradaya yoham tesena eva saha. Various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. Muchante sarvakyobhire, bhunjate te dukham papa, ye pachantyatmakarana. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins, food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment barely eat only sin. Annat bhavanti bhutani, parjanyad annasambhavah, yagyat bhavati parjanyo, yagyakarma samudbhavah. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced. Grains are produced by performance of yajna, sacrifice, and yajna is born for beauty. Nanuvartayati hayaha, akaya indriyaramo, moham partha sajivati. My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle certainly leads a life full of sin. Living only for the satisfaction of the senses, such a person lives in vain.
Madhava, I will have you recite all the verses every day. 317.
Yasvaatmatir eva syat, atmatriptasya manavah, atmanyeva cha santushtas, tasya kalyam na vidyate. But for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. Yadyada chariti shrestha, tattad evetaro janah, sayat prananam kurute, lokastad anuvartate. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues.
22. Name parthastu paritamya, stirishu lokeshu kinchana, tangla vaptalya vaptalyam, vrata eva chatamuni, usanapnita. There is no law prescribed for me that all the three quantity systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I wanted to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. 24. Utsideya vinodamka, nakolyam karma chedam, Samkhasya Vichapatasya Upahanyamna Praja. If I did not perform prescribed duties, all these roles would be put to ruination. I would be the cause of meeting unlimited population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. 26. Buddhivedam Janayam Vajnanam Karma Sanginam Josayacham Karmani Vidvan Yukta Samacharan, so as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the filter results of prescribed duties. A learned person should not induce them to stop thought. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, we should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. प्रकृते क्रियमाणानि वनै कर्माणि सर्वशः ओंकारात्मा कर्ताहमिति मन्यते. The spirit soul of the wounded, by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. 28. तत्त्ववित्तु महाबाहो गुणकर्मा विभागयो गुणेषु वर्तन्त किमत्वा न सज्जते. One who is in the knowledge of the absolute truth or material does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences, the devotion, and work for future results.
My sarvani karmani sanyasya Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. 325. You have heard the those persons who execute their duties according to my example, who follow the steep faithfully, without envy, become free from all Prayer Swadharma Vegunaha Paradharma Swadharma Sneha Paradharma Prayavaha. It is far better to start with specified duties, even though they may be others' duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in others' duties. So another spot is dangerous. Arjuna Vacha Athakena Prayuktoya Bhakti Putta Anitsam Ativa Sneya Bhalavadi
Arjuna said, what one should do richly, by what is one about physical acts, even unwillingly, and engage their works.
Sri Bhagavan Vacha Kamaya Pradaya Rajo Kana Samudbhava Mahasano Mahapatma Vincelam Reality of God itself. It is thus only Arjuna, which is born of
With the material world of passion,
and later transformed into that, and which is the all-devouring simple enemy of this world. Satan.
Tasmat Svam Indriyanyado Niyamya Bharatarshabha Atmanam Prajahihyena Jnana Vijnana Nashanam. Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this principle of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay the destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. Indriyani paranyahur, indriyebhya param manah, manasastu para buddhir, yo buddhe paratastu saha. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence.
So let's read Mahabharata now. Yesterday we read Arjun returns. So Arjun came down in Matali's or Lord Indra's chariot driven by Matali, the chariot which is drawn by 10,000 horses. And the Pandavas who were staying on the Gandhamadana mountain as the guests of Kuvera, they waited for Arjun. And when Arjun came, they were all elated. Arjun came and first of all offered his obeisances to Daumya Muni, Guru, and then to Yudhishthir Maharaj, and then to Bhimsen, and he embraced Nakul Sahdev, and he gave gifts to Draupadi. So he had gotten jewels from Lord Indra, so he gave them as gifts to Draupadi. And then the Pandavas, his brothers, and Draupadi, they all wanted to know everything that had happened ever since he left them. So he told them how he met Indra, and then how he satisfied Lord Shiva, and then how he went to Swarga, and he learned all the arts and he got all the weapons, and Indra blessed him. And then he said when it was time for him to leave, uh, in Arjun said what he could do for him, right? You have to give a Guru Dakshina because he got all these weapons. So Lord Indra asked him, he said that now you have all these weapons, there is no warrior equal to you in the whole world. You can even defeat any Devatas or Danavas. You can fight with anyone. So I want you to go and fight with the Nivata Kavachas who live at the depth of the ocean, and they are the enemies of the demigods. So going in my chariot with Matali, I want you to go and fight. So Arjun went, and they went. The chariot was such that it could go inside the ocean. So they reached at the bottom of the ocean, and there was a huge city which was protected by high walls, and there were so many unlimited number of Danavas, the Nivata Kavachas, soldiers with so many weapons. So the rattling of this chariot made such a sound that they all came and they attacked Arjun, and they were coming in waves, and there was a terrible fight. And also because they were Danavas, at first it appeared like Arjun was defeating them, so then they took to illusory tricks. So they started creating illusions. And at one point Arjun was almost bewildered, right? Even Matali, but using his divyastras he was able to defeat the Nivata Kavachas. And then from there, when he was going back, on the way in the air, there was another kingdom. It was of the Kala Kanyas, and they were also, actually they couldn't be defeated by anyone except by a human being. Is that what it is? They had some benediction. Anyone remembers the Kala Kanyas? Why Indra was not able to defeat them? Yes, Isha.
Because Brahmaji blessed them that they would be able to defeat all the demigods, I think.
Brahmaji blessed them that
They would be able to defeat the demigods, and the demigods won't be able to defeat them.
But how Arjuna would be able to defeat?
Because
I think
he's
there's
a,
something about a human being.
yeah, I think because he's a human being.
So then, and he's not just an ordinary. No. The thing is, you cannot defeat them, but in Lord Brahma gave a benediction. You will not be able to defeat them in this form. You will be able to defeat them in another form. That means Indra's expansion is Arjun, isn't it? Arjun is Indra's son. So when they heard, and finally Arjun was able to defeat them. He used the Pashupatastra, right, against the Kalakanyas, and then he defeated them. So when Yudhishthir Maharaj and his brothers heard about this, that he is, he defeated the enemies which even Indra was not able to defeat. They were so happy like that, and then they wanted to see these weapons which Arjun had received from the demigods. So can you show us those? And Arjun said, yes, of course. And then he started chanting mantras. But as soon as and started meditating on those weapons, but as soon as he started meditating, all of a sudden there were terrible omens, right? The earth started to tremble, the air stopped moving, and then there appeared Lord Brahma along with all other demigods. And Lord Brahma said, O Arjun, O best of all men, uh, be blessed, but you cannot use these divyastras for no reason or against an ordinary enemy. They are meant only for extraordinary enemies who have celestial weapons or against celestials. If you use them for any other purpose ordinarily, then they will cause devastation. They will cause destruction. So then Arjun, immediately accepted, and he bowed down, withdrew, and even Yudhishthir Maharaj also respected. And then the demigod said that, don't worry, Yudhishthir Maharaj, you will see these weapons when Arjun uses them in the battlefield, like that. So where did we end the chapter yesterday? Let's see. The brothers bowed to Narada and departed along with all the gods. Yeah, so it was Narad Muni who said that don't be so rash, and so it was not Lord Brahma, it was Narad Muni who said. They saw Brahma surrounded by the demigods, yes, but it was Narad Muni who spoke. Yes, so Lord Brahma was there with Narad Muni and all the demigods, but it was Narad Muni who said. Okay, then we'll continue. Chapter 30, Krishna visits the Pandavas. The Pandavas continued to dwell in Kuvera's abode for 4 more years. So they just stayed there on the Gandhamadana mountain after Arjun returned. For 4 more years, they just stayed there in Kuvera's abode. In that celestial atmosphere, they hardly felt the time at all. One day, Arjun and Bhima approached Yudhishthir and spoke with him privately. Bhima said, O king of the Kurus, in order to make good your vow, we have restrained ourselves and not killed Dhritarashtra's sons. What was Yudhishthir Maharaj's vow? That he will agree to the terms, yes, that they had decided. He will follow the agreement that was decided upon. Whoever loses the dice game, he will spend 13 years in the forest. So this was Yudhishthir Maharaj's vow. So Bhimsen and Arjun are saying, or Bhimsen is saying, O king of the Kurus, in order to make good your vow, we have restrained ourselves and not killed Dhritarashtra's sons. Rather, we have lived for 11 years. So it's already 11 years since they've been living in the forest. We have lived for 11 years in the forest, deprived of our inheritance. These past 4 years have not been difficult because they were in Kuvera's abode. But the time is now approaching when, in accordance with our promise, we will need to enter some habited region and live incognito. Yes, the 13th year they have to live in in a kingdom somewhere, not in the forest, but they should be living in disguise. Let us therefore leave this mountain and descend again to earth, because this was a celestial region, Gandhamadana. So let's go down and again go back to earth. Bhima said that both he and Arjun were determined to punish Duryodhan, but feared that if they remained on the high plateaus of the heavenly Gandhamadhan, they might forget the miseries the Kauravas had inflicted upon them. This would weaken their determination. Therefore, we desire to leave now. We brothers, assisted by the infallible Krishna, will surely help you regain your kingdom. We all desire your welfare and long to encounter your enemies in battle. Yudhishthir agreed that it was now time to depart. Along with Draupadi, the brothers visited the various groves and lakes of Kuvera's abode one last time, offering their respects and saying farewell. Yudhishthir then prayed to Gandhamadana mountain. O Lord of mountains, we are ready to depart. Please grant that after we have conquered our enemies and recovered our kingdom, we may again see you at the end of our lives. Okay, so this was Yudhishthir Maharaj's prayer to Gandhamadhan mountain, that at the end of our lives we may again see you. Yudhishthir was thinking of the time when, after ruling the kingdom, they would finally retire to perform asceticism and gain spiritual emancipation. Surrounded by his brothers and the Brahmins, he then began to march down the mountainside. Bhima summoned Ghatotkacha and his followers, and they again carried the Pandavas' party over the difficult mountain passes. The Pandavas were sorry to leave Kuvera's abode, but as they gazed back at its sublime beauty, their minds were delighted. The brothers soon arrived at Badrika ashram. After being greeted by the sages there, Yudhishthir dismissed Ghatotkacha, choosing to continue the downward journey on foot. Okay, so they just came to Badrika ashram. I have a. When did we read about when means at which place were the Pandavas when Garudji comes and picks up a snake and goes away, and there's such a wind, and they hear the sound of Samaveda? Where does that happen, Isha? Which ashram? Badrika ashram. Okay, in Badrika ashram. Okay. So now they came back to Badrika ashram. So then why that is mentioned? What was the impetus? Like after seeing that, what did they decide? They just went to Rishaparva's ashram from there after Garudji came. Ashtishena next. Yes. Okay. So yeah, because I remember when I was giving a recap, I didn't cover that part about Garudji coming. Okay. So now they went back to Badrika ashram. The brothers soon arrived at Badrika ashram. How they came? Ghatotkacha and his followers brought them. After being greeted by the sages there, Yudhishthir dismissed Ghatotkacha, choosing to continue the downward journey on foot. So now they're not going to stop at Badrika ashram, they're going to go down further. So they decided to walk on foot. After remaining a month with the Badrika sages, they set off towards Subahu's country. They met Subahu and spent a night with him there before proceeding toward the forest Vishakayapa. So this is not Subahu of Ramayana. Subahu was killed by Lord Ramchandra. So they went to Subahu's country. They met Subahu and spent a night with him there before. Huh? No, it's not. Subahu was killed, right? Lord Ramchandra killed. So they met Subahu and spent a night with him there before proceeding toward the forest Vishakayapa. As they traveled, followed by their porters and servants, they saw charming woodlands, lakes, rivers, and fields. They stopped each evening at dusk and camped wherever they were, preparing a meal from simple forest fare. Gradually they reached Vishakayapa, still within the Himalayan range, just as the monsoon season was approaching. They decided to remain in Vishakayapa until the rains passed and then return to Kamyaka. On the first day of their stay at Vishakayapa, Bhima went to explore the area. Armed with a bow and sword, he wandered at his pleasure through the woods, which were frequented by Gandharvas and Siddhas. The trees rang with the sounds of exotic birds and bore fruits and blossoms in all seasons. Bhima saw clear rivulets flowing from the mountains, creating large transparent lakes filled with lotuses. Wild boars rushed at the Pandava, and he killed them each with a slap. He also slew numerous buffaloes and deer, piercing them with his sharp arrows. Bhima possessed the strength of 10,000 elephants, and he sportingly uprooted and broke many large trees, clearing areas where rishis could later dwell and perform sacrifices. He struck his arms and roared exultantly as he roamed about. Elephants and lions fled in fear as they heard his roars. The ever proud Bhima, devoid of fatigue, filled the skies with his shouts. He crushed mountain peaks by kicking them. Ranging along the mountainside, he saw large serpents retreat into caves as they heard him approach. Bhima pursued them along the rocky plateaus. Suddenly, he came upon a terrible looking serpent resembling a hill. It lay coiled at the mouth of a great cave, entirely blocking its entrance. Its skin was yellow with black spots, and inside its yawning mouth were four fangs. As the snake glared about with its copper colored eyes, its forked tongue licked the corners of its mouth. Bhima stopped and gazed at the serpent. It looked like a grim destroyer as it lay hissing as if to reprimand him. As Bhima came closer, the snake suddenly seized him and entwined its coils around him. Bhima felt his strength draining from his body, and despite his efforts, he was unable to extricate himself. He trembled and fell unconscious for several minutes. As he returned to consciousness, he considered his predicament. Who was this being? How had it succeeded in overpowering him? Bhima again exerted himself, but found that he was unable to move. Clearly, this was not an ordinary snake. He decided to ask the creature its identity. O best of snakes, kindly tell me who you are and what you will do with me. I am Bhimsen, Pandu's son and Dharmaraja's brother. With my bare hands alone, I have slain in battle countless lions, tigers, buffaloes, and elephants. Not even the celestials can stand against me. How is it? How is it then that you have succeeded in overpowering me? Is it by virtue of a particular science or boon that you possess such power? Is it by virtue of a particular science or boon that you possess such power? The serpent's voice was solemn. O mighty armed one, I have been hungry for a long time. Therefore, it is my good fortune that you have arrived here. You must be the food ordained for me by the gods. Now listen as I explain how I came to live in a serpent body. My name is Nahusha, and I am a royal sage. After attaining heaven, I was cursed by Agastya Rishi and fell to earth as a snake. Thus, you are my descendant, O hero, but that will not stop me from eating you. Whatever falls within my grasp during the middle of the day, be it a cow, a buffalo, or even a human, becomes my next meal. Agastya promised that whomever I seized will lose his strength. Thus, you have been overcome by virtue of that sage's power. Agastya also told me that I would be freed from this curse when someone could answer my questions about the relationship between the soul and the Supreme Being. Thinking of Krishna, Bhima replied, O mighty creature, I am neither angry nor do I blame myself for this calamity. Sometimes a man may succeed in his endeavors for happiness and sometimes he may fail. Certainly the results are not in his hands, and therefore he should not lament his misfortune. Who could ever be superior to destiny? Destiny is supreme, and exertion made for material gains is useless. Bhima said he did not grieve for his own impending death, but he felt sad for his brothers and mother. They depended on him and would surely be deprived of strength and energy when they discovered what had happened. And Duryodhan would rejoice. Back at the Pandavas' camp, Yudhishthir was perceiving ill omens. Jackals howled, and the dreadful Vartika bird, with its one leg, one wing, and one eye, circled overhead. It screamed and vomited blood. The wind blew furiously, and the four directions seemed to be ablaze. Yudhishthir felt his left eye and arm trembling, and his heart palpitating. He looked about the ashram and not seeing Bhima, asked Draupadi, "Where is my powerful brother?" Draupadi replied that he had been long out. Alarmed, Yudhishthir decided to go after him personally. After instructing Arjun to guard Draupadi and the twins to protect the Brahmins, he began to search for Bhima in the forest. Following his footprints, he soon found the smashed trees and the beasts that Bhima had slain. He also saw a trail of bushes which had been blown over by the wind coming from Bhima's body as he ran after game in the forest. Yudhishthir moved as quickly as he could and soon came to a rough place where Bhima's tracks seemed to end. The ground was dry and full of thorn bushes, stumps, and gravel. Strong winds gusted around tall, leafless trees. Yudhishthir began to make his way up the steep incline toward the plateau above. He sensed that his brother was nearby, and he scrambled up the slope. Soon he came to the serpent's lair. There, at the entrance to the cave, Yudhishthir found Bhima wrapped in the serpent's coils. Yudhishthir was amazed to see Bhima held by a snake, and he said, "Who is this best of serpents with a body as big as a mountain? How have you fallen into its clutches, O son of Kunti?" "This is the royal sage Nahusha in serpent form, O worshipful brother. He plans to eat me." Yudhishthir addressed Nahusha. "Kindly release my brother, O energetic one. We shall satisfy you with some other food." Nahusha moved slightly. "I have obtained this son of a king for my food and will not release him. You should leave this place, or else I will eat you tomorrow. The sage Agastya has granted me a boon that whosoever comes within my reach will become my food. You are also within my reach. I have not eaten for a long time and will not give up your brother, nor do I want any other meal." Feeling pain to see Bhima's plight, Yudhishthir thought carefully. This being was not actually a snake, but a great king and an ancestor of the Pandavas. Yudhishthir had heard of Nahusha many times. He had performed numerous sacrifices and become the emperor of the earth before finally going to heaven. After ascending to the higher regions, he must have been cursed to fall down again. Perhaps there was some condition to the curse. If Nahusha could be freed from his serpent form, then Bhima could be released. "O snake, under what conditions will you free my brother?" "Intoxicated with the pride of wealth and power, I insulted the Brahmins," replied Nahusha. "I was thus cursed by Agastya and brought into this miserable state. But the sage stipulated that I would be released when I found a man capable of answering my questions on spiritual subjects. This, then, is the only way by which your brother can be freed. Answer my questions, O sinless one, and free both Bhima and me. Ask whatever you will, O serpent, I will try my best to answer." Yudhishthir was always glad to have the opportunity to speak about spiritual matters. For him, this forest exile had provided a welcome opportunity to hear from the rishis and engage in a deep study of scripture, free from the pressures of state affairs. He had acquired an almost unrivaled knowledge of the Vedas. He listened attentively as Nahusha began to speak. Fixing his narrow eyes upon Yudhishthir, the serpent said, How can we recognize a true Brahman, O king? And what is the highest object of knowledge? A Brahman is characterized by the qualities of honesty, purity, forgiveness, self control, asceticism, knowledge, and religiosity. The highest object of knowledge is the Supreme Brahman, which can be known when one has transcended all duality. The qualities you have attributed to Brahmins are also found in other classes of men, Nahusha replied doubtfully. And how can anyone exist without experiencing happiness and distress, the basis of all duality? Yudhishthir smiled. It seemed the snake was already quite knowledgeable and was testing him. If one finds these qualities in any man, then he should be known as a Brahman, no matter what his birth may have been. Happiness and distress in relationship to material objects can be transcended while still being experienced in relation to the Supreme. Okay, so what was Yudhishthir Maharaj's answer? The highest object of knowledge is Supreme Brahman, which can be known when one has transcended all duality. Duality means happiness and distress. So the snake is saying, how can one transcend happiness and distress? Is there ever a time where you don't experience happiness and distress? So then Yudhishthir Maharaj is saying, happiness and distress in relation to material objects. You can still have happiness in relation to the Supreme Lord, and maybe distress also in relation, right? Separation from Krishna is distress, but that is not material distress. So the happiness and distress in relationship to material objects can be transcended while still being experienced in relation to the Supreme. Material emotions are perverted reflections of original spiritual feelings. Nahusha was satisfied with Yudhishthir's answer, and he asked him to elaborate further. What was the use of dividing society according to caste if such divisions meant nothing? In reply, Yudhishthira explained that due to the intermixture of social classes, it had become difficult to ascertain a man's class. Only by examining his actual qualities could a man's class be known. Thus, society should be divided on that basis only, not on the basis of birth. Nahusha said, O king, you are clearly acquainted with knowledge. How then can I devour your brother? It was obvious to Yudhishthir that Nahusha was himself highly learned. After all, he had once ruled the earth and ascended to heaven after being instructed by the sages. He thought it would be worth making inquiries from such a personality. Folding his palms and standing before Nahusha, Yudhishthir said, I too regard you as one possessed of superior knowledge. Please instruct me if you will. By what acts can one attain heaven? In my opinion, O Bharata, one can reach heaven by giving charity to Brahmins, by being kind and gentle in speech, by truthfulness, and by remaining non envious toward all living beings. Which of those acts do you consider the best? And what constitutes non envy? Each of these items can be considered superior or inferior depending upon circumstance. One must therefore understand life's ultimate goal in order to know how to act properly at all times. This you have already explained, O king. All acts and knowledge should be aimed at achieving the supreme. Non envy means always desiring the welfare and advancement of all living beings, rather than to exploit them for one's own pleasure. In particular, one should desire the spiritual progress of others and act to assist them in that progress. How does the soul accept a material body, O Nahusha? The soul or Atma receives bodies according to his own behavior. Thus, he transmigrates life after life, impelled by his sinful and pious acts, sometimes going to heaven and sometimes moving about in the body of an animal. Final liberation is attained when one comes to know Brahman, the Supreme Absolute. Yudhishthir nodded. The snake's answers were in accord with what he had learned from the rishis. Clearly, Nahusha had deep spiritual realizations. How then had he become a snake? Nahusha replied, By sacrifice and asceticism, I became so powerful that I coursed through the heavens on a golden chariot. I became emperor of the wide earth, and even the Gandharvas, Yakshas, Rakshasas, and all the inhabitants of the three worlds, even the rishis, paid me taxes. Such was my power that I withdrew the energy of anyone simply by looking at them. Then my pride overwhelmed me, and I lost my good sense. My knowledge became covered by the ignorance born of pride. My knowledge became covered by the ignorance born of pride. I ordered the Brahmin sages to draw my chariot and thus offended them. So instead of horses carrying, generally it's the horses that pull a chariot. So Nahusha made Brahmins pull his chariot in the place of horses out of pride. One day while in heaven, I touched Agastya Rishi with my foot. The sage cursed me and I fell to earth, my body changing into that of a serpent. In accord with Agastya's words, however, you have now freed me from that curse. My discussion with you has reawakened my knowledge. I now realize that my real interest lies in cultivating Brahminical qualities and spiritual knowledge, not in material status or opulence. Nahusha released Bhima, and the serpent body immediately died. From out of it, the two brothers saw a glowing celestial figure emerge, wearing golden ornaments and beautiful garlands. He bowed before the Pandavas and then rose into the sky and disappeared. Yudhishthira and Bhima returned to the ashram and recounted the incident to the others. When Yudhishthira had finished, the Brahmins reprimanded the now sheepish Bhima for his rashness in having challenged the serpent and warned him not to be so foolish again. Within days of their arrival at Vishakhayapa, the monsoons arrived. They set up their camp on high ground and watched as the rains fell and flooded the earth. They could no longer see the sun. Bolts of lightning lit the forest, while streams of frothing water rushed across the earth, hissing like flights of arrows. All the forest creatures became delighted and frolicked in the rain soaked woods. Gradually, the season turned to autumn. The clouds dispersed, and the sky was lustrous. The days were warm, and the nights cool. The Pandavas surveyed the refreshed forest scenery and decided that it was an auspicious time, the sacred month of Kartik, to return to Kamyaka. A few days after their arrival, Kartik, that season, autumn is called Sharad, like Sharat Bihari. Sharad. So that's when they decided to come back. A few days after their arrival, Krishna and Satyabhama came to visit. Krishna knew that Krishna knew they had returned to the Kamyaka by his inconceivable powers. Krishna had come once before, remember? And now again, Krishna came with Satyabhama because he understood that they were back in Kamyaka. The Pandavas were overjoyed to see their well wishing friend. With tears in their eyes, they rose up to greet him. Krishna got down from his chariot and bowed at Yudhishthira and Bhima's feet, as well as the feet of Dhaumya and the Brahmins. He embraced Arjun and accepted the twins' obeisances. Satyabhama embraced Draupadi, and when she and her husband were comfortably seated among the Pandavas, they all began to converse. Arjun told Krishna of everything that had transpired with him since their last meeting. He then inquired after Krishna and his family's welfare, asking especially about his wife Subhadra and their son Abhimanyu. Krishna assured him that all was well. Turning to Yudhishthir, he said, O king, the wise assert that righteousness is superior to winning kingdoms, and to cultivate righteousness, asceticism is necessary. In strict obedience to truth, you have performed your duties, and you have thus conquered both this world and the next. You are not addicted to sensual pleasures, nor do you act out of selfishness. Although you have won opulent kingdoms and been surrounded by luxury, you have not swayed from your practices of charity, truthfulness, asceticism, religion, forgiveness, and patience. Yudhishthir bowed his head modestly as Krishna continued. Who but you, O Dharmaraj, could have tolerated the outrage toward Draupadi, so very odious to virtue. There can be no doubt that you will recover your kingdom in due course. When your vow is fulfilled and the 13 years have passed, we shall do everything in our power to chastise the Kauravas. Krishna spoke kindly to Draupadi, saying that it was by good fortune she had obtained such virtuous men as her husbands. He gave her news of her sons who were staying in Drupada's kingdom and who also spent time in Dwaraka, where Subhadra showered them with motherly love. Krishna's own son Pradyumna was instructing all the Pandavas' sons in the martial arts. When Krishna fell silent, Yudhishthir said, O Keshava, there is no doubt that you are our highest refuge. We are always under your protection. When the time comes, you will surely do everything to restore to us our kingdom. Then they saw Markandeya Rishi approaching. That immortal sage, who appeared like a youth of no more than 16 years, was cheerful, dressed only in a loincloth and holding a water pot. The Pandavas, Krishna, and all the Brahmins stood to offer respect, then offered Markandeya a seat of honor. After he had been worshipped with argya and presented with sweet water and forest fruits, Krishna said, We all wish to hear your most excellent words. Kindly narrate to us the ancient histories of virtuous kings and rishis, replete with moral and spiritual instruction. At that moment, Narada also arrived and was received. He too wished to hear Markandeya speak in Krishna's presence. With those two personalities sitting amid the Pandavas and the numerous Brahmanas, it seemed as if the sun and moon were seated together in the presence of the planets. Everyone waited for Markandeya to speak. They all knew that the sage had lived since the beginning of the material creation and was therefore acquainted with countless histories of great sages and kings. The Supreme Lord Narayan had personally instructed him, and thus he possessed profound spiritual understanding. Yudhishthir asked, Please tell me, O highly learned one, how a man receives the results of his own deeds. I am mystified upon seeing how I have been deprived of my kingdom, while Dhritarashtra's sinful sons prosper. Does one receive the results of his actions during the same life, or do they visit him only in a later existence? How do the results of a man's acts follow him after death? Where do they repose when he gives up his body? Nice questions. Markandeya remained silent for a moment. He looked around at the concourse of people assembled in the forest clearing. It seemed as if Yudhishthir were still in Indraprastha, seated in his assembly hall. Raising his right hand, the sage then replied, The embodied soul travels from life to life as a result of his own acts, good and bad. At no time is the soul without a body, as long as he remains within this world, trying to enjoy his senses. The soul is covered first by a subtle body made of mind, intelligence, and false ego. The subtle body carries the recollection of every experience the soul has ever had, and thus assumes various gross material forms. Yamaraj controls all of this. Indeed, Yamaraj keeps track of every soul within the material universe. He is empowered by the all knowing Supreme Soul who resides in the heart of every living being. Thus does Yamaraj award all beings their just deserts. He never makes a mistake in this regard. Markandeya paused to allow his listeners to absorb what he was saying. Some men enjoy in this life, but not in the next. Some in the next, but not in this, and others in both. Some men enjoy neither in this life nor in the next. A wealthy man who spends this life in pleasure will suffer in the next. This is what Srila Prabhupada quotes. So now you know where this is coming from, right? Majiva Majiva. Muniputra Majiva Majiva. Rajaputra Chiranjiva. Muniputra Majiva. Like that. So this was Srila Prabhupada quotes. So this is said by Markandeya Rishi to Yudhishthir Maharaj. Okay. A wealthy man who spends this life in pleasure will suffer in the next. So this is the prince. An ascetic who forgoes pleasure in this life will enjoy in the next. This is a brahmachari living under a guru's shelter. He forgoes pleasure in this life, but he will enjoy in the next. Those who marry and live pious lives as householders, performing sacrifice and giving charity, enjoy both in this life and the next. Right? So there it is said a devotee. For him, whether he lives or dies, it's the same thing. Because while living also he's happy in Krishna consciousness, and after he gives up this body, he'll go back to Godhead. So for a sadhu, it does not matter whether he lives or dies, it's the same thing. But the foolish man who follows no scriptural injunctions suffers continuously life after life. Who is this? Foolish man who does not follow scriptural injunctions, Srila Prabhupada says, a butcher. Because now his life is like hell. He's always surrounded by blood and flesh, and after dying, he'll go to hell. So this life also is miserable, future is also miserable. As far as you brothers are concerned, you are virtuous and have been born only to fulfill the God's purposes. You are great devotees of the Supreme Lord and thus cannot be affected by karmic reactions. This is a devotee, right? It's not, your suffering is not coming because of your karma. Your apparent setback will ultimately lead to your everlasting fame and happiness. You will be glorified in the world of men, and at the end of your lives, you will attain the highest abode. Yudhishthir reflected on the sage's reply. Then he asked, O learned sage, in this world, our lives are dedicated to the Brahmins. If it pleases you, kindly tell us about a Brahmin's greatness and glory. In response, the Rishi recounted numerous ancient histories. His audience was wrapped in wonder. He also described the creation of the universe, which he had personally witnessed, and the nature of the destruction that occurs at the end of Brahma's day, a period of millions of years. He described how he had floated on the causal water out of which creation occurs as it rose and covered the lower and middle planets, because he lived through the annihilation. Markandeya Rishi. So he's even describing what happens during annihilation. At the end of that inundation, he had seen a wonderful child lying on a banyan leaf. I was struck with amazement. I could not understand how a child could have survived when the entire universe was destroyed. The boy was effulgent, and his face was as beautiful as the moon. His eyes resembled full blown lotuses, and his body was blackish color. He lay there smiling and sucking his toe. This boy on a banyan leaf lay there smiling and sucking his toe. Then on his chest, I saw the mark of Srivatsa and thought it must be Vishnu, although I could not be sure. As I approached him, he said, My child, I know you are eager to rest. Yeah. Uh, One second. Yeah. Although I could not be sure. As I approached him, he said, as I approached him, he said, the boy is speaking, little boy, My child, I know you are eager to rest. O Markandeya, enter my body and rest a while. I am pleased with you. Because Markandeya Rishi was through this whole annihilation in that water of devastation for the whole kalpa. One kalpa is creation, and another kalpa is again the time of annihilation, when there is no creation. For the whole kalpa, he was tossed around in the water. So now, towards the end of the night of Brahma, this little baby appeared on the banyan leaf, the baby who had Srivatsa on his chest. So obviously, it's the Supreme Lord. And the child said to Markandeya Rishi, My child, I know you are eager to rest. You are very tired. You come, enter my body, and you can rest for some time. I am pleased with you. When the boy addressed me, I lost all sense of my identity and forgot my material designations. He opened his mouth, and I felt myself drawn into it as if he was sucked into the mouth of that baby. Suddenly, entering his stomach, I beheld the whole earth with all its cities and kingdoms. I wandered about for some time. All this is happening in the stomach. He saw cities and kingdoms, and Markandeya Rishi is walking, wandering about for some time, seeing all the familiar sights, including the Ganges and her tributaries, the Himalayas, and the forests in which I had performed asceticism. All that he's seeing in the stomach. I also saw the race of celestials headed by Indra, as well as the races of Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Although I wandered about within that boy's body for a long time, I never did find its limit. Confused, I began to worship the Supreme Lord with my thoughts and words. Suddenly, I found myself emerging again, and once more I saw him lying on the banyan leaf. That means he came out of the body of that boy, and he saw the baby lying on the banyan leaf. I worshipped that immeasurably powerful being who had swallowed up the entire universe, and I placed my head at his feet. I asked him who he was and about his purpose. Why was he lying there with the universe held in his body? The child spoke in such a way that my material illusions were completely dispelled. He told me that he was the original supreme person from whom everything emanates and into whom it enters at its end. I was amazed to hear him speak of his own glories. He is known as Vishnu, Narayan, and Hari, but he possesses innumerable other names. That all knowing personality then told me that I should remain within his body until Brahma again awoke and recreated the universe. He disappeared from my sight, and I found myself back within the varied creation I had seen within him. Finishing his narration, Markandeya looked across at Krishna. King Yudhishthir, that lotus eyed boy whom I saw at the end of the creation has now appeared as Krishna. He has become your relative and friend. Without doubt, you should know him to be the ancient Supreme Person, the inconceivable Hari, and the original personality of Godhead. He granted me the boon that my memory would never fail and that my death would come only when I wanted it. Seeing Krishna sitting here wearing a yellow silken garment, I am remembering that boy. Do not doubt that it was he whom I saw in the waters of devastation. O hero among men, this entire creation rests within him, even as air rests within ether. Take refuge in Krishna, for there are none superior to him. Exact realization as Satyavrata Muni, right? He said, we are reading now in Srimad Bhagavatam about Matsya Bhagavan. Satyavrata Muni is also saying, all the benedictions given by all the demigods and all different types of gurus and all other relatives, friends, all other living beings, all those benedictions put together cannot even equal 1/10,000th of the mercy shown by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, who deserves more than the Supreme Lord to be taken shelter of? So, here also Markandeya Rishi is saying to Yudhishthir Maharaj that take refuge in Krishna, for there is none superior to him. Hearing the Rishi's words, the Pandavas bowed down before Krishna. Krishna smiled gently and spoke comforting words to them. He glanced affectionately at Markandeya, who gazed back at Krishna with love. Yudhishthir then asked Markandeya to describe the future. Kali Yuga, the darkest age, was approaching. Yudhishthir wanted to know what would happen to the world at that time. Markandeya told him in detail how everything would become more and more degraded. People would become irreligious and would thus be oppressed by misery. The age would culminate in the appearance of Kalki Avatar, who would restore order to the world and bring about Satya Yuga, the golden age. Yudhishthir and Markandeya discoursed for hours, and the audience remained fixed on hearing Markandeya's detailed responses, replete with accounts of the different kings, sages, and the celestials who had lived throughout the ages. As evening approached, Yudhishthir finally stopped asking questions. Along with his brothers, he worshipped Markandeya. Then the rishi took his leave. Narada also left at that time, ascending into the skyways. Just I want to make a note here. In today's Srimad Bhagavatam class, which at ISKCON Philadelphia, it is Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, first chapter, first verse. There, Sukadev Goswami is uh, glorifying Parikshit Maharaj for his excellent question. Parikshit Maharaj's question was related to Krishna. So there it is, we discussed how, and we actually listened to Srila Prabhupada speak today. It was Srila Prabhupada's lecture on this verse. It was given in Paris. So Srila Prabhupada said, Atmavit. Atmavit means one who is self-realized. So what is Srimad Bhagavatam? Srimad Bhagavatam is nothing but questions and answers. Parikshit Maharaj put questions and one Atmavit, a self-realized person, is giving answers. This is the highest thing. And there's only one topic here. There's only one subject for question and answers. What is that? Krishna. How to approach Krishna. Bhakti to Krishna. That's all. Whereas those who are not grihasthas, those who are grihamedis, that means materialistic people, for them there are so many topics, so many questions and so many answers. But for a devotee, there's only one. And such questions are so beneficial for the whole society. Therefore, we see Yudhishthir Maharaj from morning until evening, he's asking questions, and Atmavit, Markandeya Rishi, is answering. And everyone else sitting there is soaking up all that. Everyone is being benefited by that. The person who's asking, the person who's answering, and everyone else who's hearing. And also that place itself also becomes sanctified. Uh, in the purport, it is said, it is like river Ganges. That river Ganges, wherever it flows, it purifies that place. Anyone who takes bath in her becomes purified. Anyone who drinks that water becomes purified. Like that, narrations of the Supreme Lord coming from pure devotees of the Lord, they are like the river Ganges. Wherever that sound vibration goes, everyone who hears it, everyone who inquires about it, and who speaks, and that place itself becomes spiritualized, becomes sanctified. So, all glories to Yudhishthir Maharaj. So, Yudhishthir finally stopped asking questions. It was evening. Along with his brothers, he worshipped Markandeya. Then the rishi took his leave. Okay, Markandeya rishi left. Narada also left at that time, ascending into the skyways. Narad Muni came after Krishna asked Markandeya rishi to give some instructions. Seeing that Markandeya rishi is going to speak, Narad Muni arrived there. And when Markandeya rishi left, Narad Muni also left. Krishna is there. When Markandeya was gone, Krishna spent a little more time talking with the Pandavas. Satyabhama took the opportunity to speak with Draupadi and ask her how she was able to serve and satisfy 5 husbands. Krishna's wife wanted to learn from the Panchala princess, who was famed for her chastity and womanly skills. Can you imagine? Krishna's wife wanted to learn from Draupadi. Krishna's wife wanted to learn. And by the way, Satyabhama we know is expansion of Srimati Radharani. So this is how the Lord and his devotees are. So Krishna's wife wanted to learn from the Panchala princess, who was famed for her chastity and womanly skills, so that she might improve her own service to Krishna. Draupadi told her in detail about the many ways she served her husbands. Draupadi said, abandoning vanity and subduing desire and wrath, I serve my husbands with attention, along with their other wives. I do not feel my position of servitude to be a degraded one, and I restrain jealousy by remaining devoted. I neither bathe, sleep, nor eat before my husbands, or even before our servants and followers. At no time do I allow my mind to dwell upon another man or any celestial. My heart never sways from my husbands. The minute I see them, I rise up and greet them, offering them a seat and water. I always keep our living quarters clean and fragrant, and all the household items and food well ordered. Satyabhama herself, a great favorite of Krishna's, listened attentively. Draupadi described how she would never enjoy anything her husbands did not enjoy, nor would she perform any act disagreeable to them. When they went away, she renounced her ornaments and cosmetics and practiced asceticism. She tried always to assist her husbands as they performed sacrifices and other religious practices. I am the first to rise from bed and the last to take rest. I am ever attentive to my duty and never give way to sloth. In my opinion, service to the husband is the eternal virtue of women. The husband is the wife's God and her sole refuge. By serving him, she pleases even the Supreme Lord himself, and therefore attains to the highest destination. When Draupadi finished, Satyabhama embraced her. She heard Krishna calling her, and so took her leave, promising to come to Indraprastha after the Pandavas had regained their kingdom. Krishna bid farewell to the Pandavas and was ready to depart. He and Satyabhama mounted the chariot, which was yoked with Shaibya and Sugriva. Seeing Draupadi standing before him so meekly, Krishna said, "O Draupadi, do not be in anxiety. Before long, you will be the wife of kings, after your husbands have crushed their enemies and won back the earth. O black-eyed beauty, ladies such as yourself, possessed of all auspicious marks, can never suffer for long. The Kauravas will soon reap the results of their sins against you. When they have been destroyed, you will see their wives despairing, even as you despaired upon leaving Hastinapur." Krishna once more assured Draupadi that her 5 sons were flourishing and that she would soon see them grown up, powerful heroes. Then, saluting the Pandavas and bowing to the Brahmins, Krishna urged on his horses and left the forest. We're going to stop there, and tomorrow's chapter will be the fight with the Gandharvas. Hare Krishna. Thank you for